We'll get started. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Isa Mark Schulman, and I'm this year's managing editor for Hayden's Ferry Review, and I'm really glad that you could join us in celebrating the release of issue 75 of HFR. I'm incredibly proud of and thankful for all of the work that our genre editors, associate editors, and interns have done to make this issue and event possible, and who dedicated so much of their time and care to this journal and its contributors. I'm also just grateful to see such a turnout tonight in the audience. During, these times of rupture and strife, it really bolsters the heart to see everyone gathering and supporting community and art. Now, it's my pleasure to announce that tonight we're joined by 5 of the issue's contributors: Sydney Mays, Tolu Daniel, Ivy Raff, Jorge Ríos, and Jennifer Galvão, will be reading their amazing work for you tonight. Before we do get started, we wanted to acknowledge the 22 Native nations that have inhabited this land for centuries. Arizona State University's 4 campuses are located in the Salt River Valley on ancestral territories of Indigenous peoples, including the Acamel Odom, Pima, and Peeposh Maricopa Indian communities, whose care and keeping of these lands allow us to be here today. We know that a land acknowledgement without action is not sufficient and are making efforts toward equitable practices, starting with our free submissions for underrepresented writers and our inaugural Indigenous Poets Prize, which took place last year. Now, last thing, I'd like to take note of a few housekeeping items. Firstly, transcription is enabled for accessibility. Please use the chat as a space to celebrate what you hear and whoever's on screen. Feel free to share moving lines or reflect on the conversation, or just, spam emotes if you really like something. Throughout the event, HFR's editor-in-chief Susan and one of our associate editors, Ivani, will be sharing links to the author's work and keeping an eye on the chat just to make sure everything's looking good in there. And finally, before I introduce our first reader, I'd like to remind folks that we will be opening for our poetry and fiction contest during the month of February, coming up pretty soon. So please check out our website for more details about that. Okay, now without further ado, I'll stop talking and I'll introduce our poetry editor, Zach, who will be introducing our first reader of the night.
Hello, everyone. My name is Zach. I'm the poetry editor here at Hayden's Ferry Review, and I have the distinct privilege and honor to introduce our first reader of the night. Their name is Sydney Mays. Sydney Mays is a poet from Denver, Colorado, winner of the 2021 Iowa Chapbook Prize. Her poems have been published or are forthcoming in The Atlantic, Poets.org, Obsidian, Denver Quarterly, Booth, Gulf Coast Journal, Beloit, Poetry Journal, and Prairie Schooner. In 2024, Mays was honored as the inaugural Only Poems Poet of the Year, selected by Jorge Ríos as a finalist for the Furious Flower Prize and by Marilyn Chin as a finalist for the Adrienne Rich Award. Executive editor of the Nashville Review, Mays is an MFA candidate in poetry at Vanderbilt University. Sydney Mays' poetry pulses with an acute awareness of place, inheritance, and survival. Her work expertly moves through geographies both external and internal, mapping the stark realities of the South, the quiet persistence of birds, the tender and brutal intimacies of family. Mays is a poet of precision and transformation. Her lines layer textures of the natural, the mythic, the bodily, the personal, and the collective. Without further ado, Sydney Mays.
Thank you so much, Zach, for that introduction. It was really, really beautiful. And thank you to Zach and Susan and all the editors at Hayden's Bay Review for publishing the 3 poems that I have in this issue. I'm going to read the first 2 out of the issue. I'll read some other poems for you all, and then I'll finish with the last one. On Bended Knee. Blue heron siphons water from creek bed, far from the downless mattress where you are propped and leaking. Far from all the places where you have become viscous, missing molar, unhitched from sear gums, tumors sharking your ocular tissue, sunglasses pushed high on the nose we share. Here, where the trees haven't conceded to brown wilt and smog, here, where there are still lavender sprigs bee-suckled and smelling like you. Here, I force my knees to fill the divots in dirt floor, force my hands to make holding of unburdened air. I plead my destabilized prayer of the patella, not for you to live, but for the fertile whir of poplars to find your hospital window. Prayer for a visitation, spring-curled lashes of spinach crop, Rain, poor shamed and pouting into South Platte's inlet. Hard spined narcissus flowers and carrot seed moths to kiss cooled sweat from the gaunt bridge of your nose in my place. This poem is called Fragments from the Second Service. It's a little all over the place for you. Okay. My God, how many have I hidden in Bible's incorrigible leather, lambast, feathers like malnourished, milk, and didn't the tender-headed, my inheritance, the blue scalp of the child who never meets God on their knees. I slit my throat on the west sick leaves of the money tree and begot the crowd. The crowd begot the foul, begot the night that shames. Silly goose, mother hisses, when the rat tail flings segregation into scalp. Holy blackboard, plucked and sun-flung, red start crosses prayer grift congregation's torrid devotion. Cows wrung lactation, stained steel spoon green, forgive. Forgive, forgive, the argan oil, the wetted mind knows. I am muffled the creator's engine with my insolence. Tithe the last, good tooth shined with newspaper, mirth and fruity pebbles, tongues spoken thick as corded sutures as the shout-scented communion crisp, neutered as forgive, forgive. Mother says she can count on one hand the time she slit with switch my forgive. I pull my hair out so easy these days. Fields of keratin that knot the drain, that kneel. It was always the lost of me that prayed. We're gonna move to some other poems. This poem I'm about to read next was published in Only Poems. It's called Golden Glossa with Squeegee and Saxophone. The only thing you need to know is that the glossa is a 15th century Spanish form that I combined with the golden shovel, and it takes a little bit from Toni Morrison's Song of Solomon, which the quote I'll read as well. And talking about dark, you think dark is just one color, but it ain't. There are 5 or 6 kinds of black, some silky, some woolly, some just empty, some like fingers, and it don't stay still, it moves and changes. Toni Morrison. You make your living pickpocketing raven feathers from skyscraper windowsills and husking pistachios with saxophonist tongue, talking about you're on God's timing, going on about how you've got plans to spit a shell so far in the dark, it'll come back scorched and dictating the standards of a new jazz. You tell me you've been composing under Bosun's chair, that you think you've got a classic, that you just need to hold something. Shit's dark, baby sis. This has always been the gully between us. The is of you, your perpetual being, your conscious eyes declaring what is just and talking about dark. You think dark is just one shade of living. To you, dark's not the color of oxtails rationed, not the collapsed flare of our nostrils, but the fact that the 2 nickels you got laughing it up in jean pocket, rubbing together when you strut squeegee down Main Street, ain't coming from the Kentucky brined palms of the manager down at the jazz club. There are only a few hands that'll slide you a check. Our mothers or a 9 to 5, Sheila's from the sperm bake with the rubies in her incisors, or mine. You, the oldest, buck-toothed and 6 years ahead, believing a regular set to be a pigmented life. Tones, kinds of color, but it ain't. There are 5 or 6 kinds of living color worth coveting, and they're all black. Black is our next come August. Black is your first saxophone case. Sometimes I wish you remembered when we lived with Silky, her window garden of sweet basil and rosemary sprigs, the way she said sun like some. The afternoons you would traverse basement crowded with woolly-haired black Santas, her camo-wrapped treadmill in the tiresome maze of our grandmother's woodwinds. I wish you remembered just cruising on Silky's corduroy-legged lap and blowing into sacks until you were empty. We were among the things that Silky had left of grandmother. Some brass, some black, some silky, some woolly, some just empty, some like kin. Now look at you, with soap, raven shit, and living caulking your fingers, begging with savant's brow and held out hand, callous and lifeline knotted above your wrists. You don't remember what it means to be small and wrinkled as plum pit. Don't remember what it is to busy your mouth with ligature, to trust sound as sound as sound, to stay unified with the reeds. Brother, you've got all your goodwill vaulted in the parts of your face still dark as sixth grade. Got on thinking your mouth will keep me giving. It will keep the blackbirds going north, old brass rusting. But you know as well as I do that what moves you to genius ain't in the talk. It's in the ulna, the carpals and fingers, and it don't stay still. It moves and changes. This next poem is called Planned Obsolescence. It's an ekphrastic piece that's based off of Carrie James Marshall's portrait of the artist in vacuum. When I go home, I sweep up coffee table plates splintered and matte with marigold and ibis. I wipe the unsighted exodus of catheter drip, trip over recycling bin, belly up with broken down boxes of Brillo pads, push a 1978 Hoover vacuum over pebble resined floors, bruised by Brothers Fishered Gate. Nowadays, they don't make a vacuum that lasts more than 5 minutes. Don't make a fish tongue flop, a cutaneous lake lotion. Don't make a wheelchair rind peel like pomelo citrus. Don't make a daughter without knees black as seal bellies, molded to kitchen floors to scorched ceramic ridges. They say the body remembers. That trauma lives in the teeth. Undentisted gums flush dark as beef rib, the fatty upper lip of a man who couldn't recall the color on his mother's walls. But he's on them walls, though. He's wearing his granddaddy's hat. He's slinging his daddy's name from razor-pricked throat. He shadows his mama's nose, migrated off the face of every girl child in the bloodline onto his opportune abyss. There is no phallus or dahlia bulb extending from my pelvis. Only ovarian cyst and pain geysered up to the ribs. There is no daughter pinned neatly like collapsed monarch to picture frame. There is no son standing almondine gloved in hospice bed shadow, breaching mother's backside for blood clot fished in shit. When she calls, her son's name echoes off walls red as uterine lining, red as the tongue loitered behind his uncorked smile. This next one is one that I'm extremely proud of. It's called The Walker System. The only thing you need to know about this one is that it's about Madam C.J. Walker, who is one of the only Black figures that we were taught about when I was growing up in Colorado. So she kind of means a lot to me. All right. The Walker System, Denver, Colorado, 1906. And on that day, George Andrew found gold at Clear Creek and all my people got rich. If you skin a dog, a good breed, color of damp wood or jukebox love, a shepherd or a coonhound, you can make a decent pomade from the silvery liquid between liver and rib. In my bag of bones, arthritis in one hip, a pan and pick bedazzled with my first husband's spine, a Great Dane's jawbone, my daughter's molar kissed, not knocked, from her mouth like the history books say. And for good luck, a varnished pig's foot on a thick gold chain. Out in the sticks, tender-headed, the two-toothed child digging pyrite out from river-scored fingertips. Dry the air, the earth flawless and colored the back of my hand. Out here in coyote country, I go long nights licking snuff with nostrils flared tongue. I emboss my money with the moniker Madam. I wave in the pebble-webbed hair of miners' wives, argan oil and sweet jelly. Change out of my good shoes to preach the gospel of a good shampoo and supplication. I say to the damp-faced gals, sagged from a first or fourth child, I say, come, hear a bit of pre-employment wisdom. To skin a dog, bitter yourself with men and figs. To make a good life, mix only petroleum and sulfates into inherited ceramic. Keep a sack of gold swinging from your tit. Follow the white man who followed the Black folks, who followed the waxwing, who follows only that which sustains and gleams. And then last but not least, I'm going to read the last poem that's in the in Hayden's Fairy Review, issue 75. All y'all should buy it. It's so good. I have a friend's piece, my friend Elisa's in here. Her piece, Orchid Mantis, is also really beautiful. So everyone should check that out as well. And this poem is called When the Climate Crisis Comes. Believe me the way the dog believes the greenhouse gases wispy trombone when it begs for segregation of water, of sky, of the sewer slick slit of sludge boot. The black earth is straining against the surly inequities harbored in the vulnerable pouch of low country. Watch the albumin's particulate. Even the eggs rotting in the gut of the goat recognize the petrochemical gob and hawk and battered loam's throat touched by the keratin whites, the honeydew melon arcs of fingernails, heat trapping beneath the exacerbating sun. Spider spined, suckled in sewage, smudged and submissioned, a people pre-perished, a people flood prone, a people the color of the gecko's split tongue, a Black people beneath rainfall. Thank you all so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that reading. That was amazing. I'm a fiction writer, so I don't have like the right terms for it, but I just loved like, I don't know, just like the sonorous quality of your language. Up next, we will have Kruger introducing Tolu Daniel.
Thank you. Tolu Daniel is a writer and editor who is an MFA creative writing graduate from Washington University in St. Louis and a graduate of Kansas State University's English Masters. His essays and short stories have appeared on Catapult.co, Blue Mesa Review, Isole Magazine, Alongo Africa, The Naciona Magazine, Lowe, Pratia Review, Elsewhere Literary Journal, and a few other places. He is currently a PhD student in comparative literature at Washington University in St. Louis. The piece I'm introducing today is titled Exodus, which really impressed the nonfiction team when we went through it. It is a visceral piece about the experience of leaving a home that you can't find a feature in anymore. And it paints such a detailed, wide landscape of so many different possible experiences that happen when that journey has begun. I hope you all enjoy it as much as we did. Tolu, feel free to start when you're ready.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the introduction. Before I move forward, I wanted to, first of all, dedicate this essay to a dear friend of mine, one of the few folks that I interviewed while writing this. His name was Sam Kiprotich. He passed away a few days ago. So Exodus is particularly important as a poem, as an essay at this moment in time, because of how precarious the situation of migrants across the country are. So I'm just going to stop talking and read. Exodus. We became spirits hovering over the untouched parts, seeking survival. This is from Exodus by Benga Dioba. We left exhausted, our eyes and bodies heavy with the tears and sweat of fighting for a country that wanted to kill us. We left angry, the veins on our necks and faces popping after several days of pleading with our government to stop killing us, but they refused. Some of us left with nothing, walking through deserts and forests with cracked lips and empty stomachs. Others left on feet sore from walking and running, piling through miles and miles of dirt road, dreaming of safety. Most of us left empty-handed, sometimes with big Ghana must-go bags, and other times with nothing at all. We left knowing that if we didn't, our days were numbered. Many of us left with the loud noise of guns and marauding invaders in our wake. We left clueless about the possibility of seeing the sun again. Some of us left in the night while the moon was bright and others slept. We left in the rain, barreling through its rough and chill waters. Give me a second. Yeah. Some of us left on small, dingy wooden boats, overcrowded with people like us. Those of us who could afford it, left on trains and planes and cars. We left well-paying jobs, left family, mothers and fathers, retired and frail, and no longer able to fend for themselves. We left brothers and sisters, those friendly faces we always knew to seek familiarity in strange places. We left nieces and nephews, and the joy of watching them grow. We left with scars, mental and physical. Many of us left thinking that anywhere is better than this. One day we will question the wisdom of this choice, but not yet. At the embassies where we lined up in anticipation for our visa interviews, those of us who believed in God said multiple prayers to Him. We arrived too early for our appointments and watched different people go in and out of the place. We stood by the huge white gates of the embassy along with tens of others. We counted the delight and sadness in the faces of those that went in before us. We wanted to ask them questions, wanted to share words of comfort, but we also did not want to upset anyone. One man who came out smiling told us that what the visa officers wanted to see was confidence. We believed him and squared our shoulders and heaved quick successive sighs as we waited our turn. During our appointments, we wore smiles foreign to our faces and made our voice loud each time the visa officer asked us a question. When he asked us why we were leaving our countries, we told him it was for school. Those of us who got job offers from Google and Amazon told him it was for work. Those of us who were rich enough to afford such things said it was for leisure. Those of us who were queer said it was because we didn't want to die. One of us, whose brother and sister were killed by the Nigerian military during the NSAS protests, said it was because she could not see any future for herself in the country. The visa officer studied our faces before responding. His gaze unnerved us, and we started answering questions he didn't ask. We told him we planned on returning to our countries after we were done with school. We told him how we planned on using our degrees to change our world. We told him that we would return once Google and Amazon switched to remote work. We told him we would return once the anti-gay legislation was repealed. We told him we were not planning to return. We searched his face for expressions that might show what he would do next. He denied some of us these visas and explained that it was because our answers were not convincing. Those of us he accepted walked out of the embassy smiling to ourselves and praising God. On the boat, we are mostly young or old. Sometimes we are children with no clue as to why we are fleeing, just speculations. We know from the tenor of the voices of our parents as it broke us from sleep on the day we left. We know when we chose the danger of the Mediterranean over living in Nigeria. Some of us on the boats are not Nigerians. We are Libyans and Moroccans. We are Malians and Cameroonians and Beninouans and Chadians and Parisians with Parisian dreams that are only rivaled by our Cien Saint-Denis and Lyon substitutes. Soon, the distinctions in our identities won't matter once we cross the ocean. Soon, we will be given other names. We will become illegal aliens, undocumented immigrants, undocumented aliens. Our stories won't matter, neither would our lives. Populist politicians will use the rhetoric of our decisions to flee our homelands as opportunities to shore up their political base. We will become subjects of debates and controversies, but all of that will be in our future. For now, we sit silent on the boat as if we thought any sudden movement might make it capsize. We know that the Mediterranean is an insatiable beast. We know that only a small percentage of us will survive this crossing, but we don't care. We have paid for this journey with everything. On our way, the ocean swallows many of us, as does the Mediterranean, as does the Sahara. Some of us meet the maker through the barrel of an immigration ranger from a South American country. Many times, the trigger event is a simple argument. Like one time when one of us laughed at a ranger who had a limp, and the price of that laughter was a bullet in his head. Other times, it is one of the smugglers who gets too drunk on gin and power that silences us forever. We leave with these losses and wear our resolves to arrive at our destinations like a badge. We dream of crossing the American border in Texas and traveling all the way to Canada. We dream of a day when these journeys will become stories. We dream of early morning coffee runs, blue collar jobs, and a picture perfect, happy family in front of a suburban house in Newfoundland. We never consider the possibility that these dreams might never move beyond the realm of sleep. After several months and sometimes years at sea, we arrive at the Darien jungle on the border between Panama and Colombia. We arrive at the Canary Islands en route to Spain and Italy. We meet people like us from countries we always assumed were better than ours, making the journey as well. We meet people from Colombia, Guatemala, Chile, Brazil, and Argentina. We meet people from the Sudan, Somalia, Ethiopia, Libya, Congo, and Eritrea. We meet people from India, Bangladesh, Philippines, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. The stories they tell us of leaving home underscores our ignorance of their existence, and they tell us, and suddenly we begin feeling not so alone in our curse. Sometimes these people don't speak English, but of they speak in a language we recognize. It is the language of weariness, the language of exhaustion, the language of fatigue, the language of traveling thousands of miles in search of something else. They tell us of scars like ours on bodies worn by travel. They tell us of cartels ruling their small villages and killing people at will. They tell us of multiple epidemics like cholera, measles, and the intermittent outbreaks of Ebola. Some of the women tell us of husbands so violent that running is the only resort because the government would not do anything. Some of the men tell us of taxes they're supposed to pay to gang leaders so high that 3 generations after them would never finish paying. Children tell us of making the journeys to find parents who abandoned them as infants. At the border, we are shocked at the cruelty of the border officers. On arrival, many of us are taken into custody and promised a fair hearing about our rights to enter America. Many of our children are taken away into places we don't know. We only know they are alive because we sometimes hear their voices from our own side of the yard. Some of us are expelled without any extra look. We are driven away in droves like sheep by mean-looking rangers with guns bigger than their arms. Some of the children who traveled from the Darien jungle with us, the ones who came to America to find long lost relatives, will also be taken away. When we walk across the yard in the evenings towards where they are supposed to get food, these kids will call to us, speaking their language of distress, and we will yearn to hold their hands as if they were ours. We will wish we're not as helpless as they were. We will talk to the guards, the rangers, and the wardens, and they will turn their faces away from us. Some of them will even tell us to mind our businesses, else our fates will be tied to those of the children. We arrive in summers, some of us arrive in winters. We will complain about how the summers are too hot and the winters too cold. Many of us will arrive during the pandemic, while the rest of the world held its breath as the coronavirus ravaged communities and families. Most of us will die because there was no access to any kind of health care. Those of us who survive will whisper in monotones to each other. We'll pray to God for sustenance and survival. During the winters, we'll wrap ourselves inside the house, leaving only when we must and returning as soon as we can. Some of us experience loneliness for the first time, and we try filling up the space with anything available. We begin drinking and smoking a lot. One of us spends most of his free time on a bench at a city park in downtown Springfield, smoking weed and talking loudly to an imaginary friend. Another of us becomes a regular at a local bar in Madison, while some of us become social media creators with a camera in front of us, screaming into the void. During the summers, we are reminded of home because of the way the sun burns in the sky. We host parties and play African music. We cook jollof rice, amala, fufu, eba, iyan, ewedu, efo, and ogbono. And we invite our American, Canadian, Russian, Finnish, Swedish, and British and Australian friends. We watch as their faces adopt new colors from the spicy assault on their taste buds. In America, Australia, and Europe, we go to school and we work to pay our tuition. Other times, we work primarily and send half of what we make back home. We work at McDonald's. We take suicide shifts at Amazon and Walmart. We work out as cab drivers, maids, nannies, care workers, and security guards. We work as farm workers, bus drivers, chef assistants, bakers, clerks. We take any job that would have us. We find out quickly. We try to fit in, thinking this will make our lives easier. We find out quickly that our accents would always give us away. We begin rolling our R's and singing our sentences the way we notice the locals do, but we soon find out that nobody cares. We consider the possibility that it might be our Blackness, so we begin trying to stand out, trying to outshine everyone with our work ethic. We begin to get hate looks from our co-workers, Black people like us, who we always called lazy because our white employer said they were. But nothing changes. Eventually we learn, through the hard way, of course, that nothing we do can change perceptions. We fall in love. Sometimes we sleep out of it. We marry. Sometimes it is for the convenience of sharing the burden of living in a strange place with somebody else. Rarely, if ever, is it for love. Many times we are accused of marrying the locals for papers. Sometimes the accusers are right. Most times they are wrong. One of us who swore he didn't believe in marriage got hitched within 2 months of our arrival, and 6 months later was divorced, claiming irreconcilable differences. Some of us have kids, many of us don't. Some of us divorced the spouses who came to these places with us and found new lovers. Some of us found people who loved us but didn't know how to love them back appropriately. Some of us got rejected by the people we fell for, and we rejected people who fell for us. One of us, after rejecting a man in a small university town in the state of Arizona, woke up the next day to take delivery of human excrement in a package sent to her by the man. Another of us, who days after breaking up with his partner, was returning home in the New York City subway from school, got a gun pulled on him by his ex. Soon we learned the language of moving on, the type that attracts the smallest kinds of rejection aggressions. On other times, we fall in love with the wrong people, and their former spouses come after us. like the one of us who was called a monkey over and over again and over by the ex-wife of her lover. More bizarre things have happened, but we continue to adapt. Another of us is decidedly having an affair with a married woman who sometimes helps him out with his bills and makes him play the role of the house nigger and his mistress. Whenever they have sex, it is loud and disturbing with a voice several decibels too loud for the taboo words she sings as she is enveloped in ecstasy. We exchange one misery for another and dream of a day we will stop running. We have moments of joy and moments of incredible happiness and then moments of intense pain. One of us who is a poet wins a major prize. Another of us, a medical research scientist, receives major funding to start his own laboratory at a major university. Another of us is arrested and threatened with deportation after being seen dancing with an underage girl at a nightclub in downtown Lubbock. One of us loses his parents in an interval of 2 days, and because his visa is expired, he can't go home for the funeral. Another of us finds out that our daughter has died in a car accident on the day she graduated top of her class in our MBA. Sorrow sits on our chests like pendants, and suddenly all the dreams we have are turned into ashes. Many times in these places, someone asks who we are. They ask why we left our countries. They ask us when we plan on returning. Many times we respond. Most times we don't. The times we do, our answers are cooked, wrapped, and packaged in anger. We want to tell our audience that they can fuck off. We want to ask them, were they in our shoes with the history of violence that drove us to this place? Would they return? Instead, we say we are here to stay. The words come out of our mouths softly, as if no simpler response has ever been given to such questions. We watch the querier's face turn. We listen to them tell us about the imminent decline of their country. Later, when we leave the space, we think about the many ways in which we feel lost. We remember the days of running barefoot through thick forests and sand dunes in the wake of attacks by murderous herdsmen to arrive in this place. We remember those stormy nights of negotiating the Mediterranean blindly to arrive in human cages on the coast of Spain. We remember the many unrealistic promises of reunion we made to our parents the last time we spoke with them on the phone. We remember who we used to be before this moment in time. We remember that once upon a time, we also were possibly nationalistic, hugging the flags of our individual countries and swearing allegiance to the Constitution that would eventually be used to displace us. We remember that we were once writers, teachers, doctors, lawyers, nurses, scholars, barbers, tailors, bricklayers, and scientists. We remember who we are supposed to be in this moment in time. We are the future of a whole country who left. We are leaders whose tomorrow will happen elsewhere. We are a generation lost to never-ending journeys, a generation in desperation, a generation searching for home. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that reading, Tolu. That line in the last paragraph, hugging the flags of our individual countries and swearing allegiance to the constitutions that eventually be used to displace us, just feels particularly keen and prescient at this moment. Now I would like to introduce Brandon, who will be introducing Ivy Raff and Jorge Ríos, and then they will be reading.
Hello, my name is Brandon Blue. I am the translations editor, and I have the honor and privilege of introducing Ivy Raff and Jorge Rios. Ivy Raff is the author of What Remains, forthcoming in 2025.